Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
Yeah, there's plenty on the show for you today, and we're going to be talking about hands-free kits. If you heard me on with Ollie and Mary, there are hands-free kits in cars as dangerous as actually holding a phone in your hand. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Do you think the hands-free kit kind of lulls you into a false sense of security and safety, and you think that I wouldn't have anyone on their phone in the car at all? You can let me know on 083 3333 975. And also want to hear your thoughts about living alone. Do you live alone? Do you absolutely love that you live alone and you enjoy your own company and you enjoy being able to do exactly what you want in your own house? Or are you living alone and you're miserable about it, you hate it? Because that's what we're talking about this morning. The best and the worst things about not sharing your home with anyone. Let's have your thoughts on that as well. And in inheritance terms, you'd love this idea, getting a letter in the door. Dear whoever you are, your Auntie Mary, you never even knew who she was, she's died, you're her only surviving relative, and you've inherited everything she had. And I'll be talking to people whose job it is this morning to track you down and make sure that you can avail of that. So that's on the agenda as well this morning. Also going to be talking about the author of a book called Murder in the Missions, Jean Harrington. I'll be talking about her. That's including the murder of Irish missionaries Father Des Hartford and Father Rufus Halley, of course, in the Philippines. So we'll be dealing with that later on in the programme as well. So let's be hearing from you. 083 3333 975 or 051 846 123. You can, of course, text using WhatsApp if you like, and Facebook and Twitter also available to you at WLRFM on Twitter, or use the hashtag Déise Today. Now, the whole 5G thing, it makes the news quite a lot. But what exactly is it, and should people be concerned? Adrian Weckler is technology editor with the Irish Independent. You're very welcome to the programme, Adrian.
Thank you, Maria.
OK, what is it now? The Idiot's Guide to 5G, please.
Yeah, it's just very fast 4G. So a lot of people will know on their phone, their iPhone or smartphone, they'll see a little symbol at the top, and it says 4G or 3G maybe, if you're not in a great coverage area. And that just really tells you how fast the network you're connecting to. And when I say fast, that means if you try to, for example, look something up on Google, or if you try and look at a video clip on Facebook or on YouTube, sometimes it will buffer, or it'll pause, or it'll stutter if it's on a slow mobile connection, like a 3G connection. It shouldn't if it's on a 4G connection, and it definitely won't if it's on a 5G connection. So it's a much faster mobile network with much more capacity.
OK, and it's why are people afraid of it? Is it significantly different than 4G?
In terms of people being afraid of it, I think you're probably referring to kind of safety concerns that there's a small number of people who, when 3G was rolled out, were freaked out that mobile masts would give them cancer. The same kind of concerns about 7 years ago when 4G was rolled out, and it's basically the exact same thing with 5G. So people get very nervous when a new technology comes in. I'm not sure if you're probably not old enough to remember when microwaves came in. I was a kid at the time, but I remember people going absolutely nuts because they thought that everybody would get cancer in their kitchen from microwave ovens. And it settled down over a few years. The concern articulated is that because the new 5G mobile frequency is a higher frequency, it's a slightly different type of radiation effect, for want of a better term, and that we don't know what the long-term health implications could be. Now, it's true that we don't know what the long-term implications could be for use of any mobile device on humans, because we've only been using them for 20 years, really. But the World Health Organization and the European Union and the Irish Telecoms Regulator and pretty much everybody else who's looked at it so far think that there's no heightened carcinogenic threat. They say that there's a bigger threat from the likes of alcohol or processed meat than there is from 5G radiation.
Which is, you can understand why they're not going to completely put their eggs in the one basket, but, eating pickled vegetables and using talcum powder are classed as having the same level of risk. So it seems that the risk is quite low. Do you think the people who are concerned, they don't need to be concerned? And would those same people have had concerns about 4G? Is there anything significantly different between 4 and 5 to warrant this extra concern?
Well, on that latter question, no. There isn't really any difference. So I got on to the Irish regulator Comreg about this, and they say that there's no appreciable difference really between 4G and 5G so far as this goes. In terms of whether people should be concerned, that's a very difficult question to answer. People have concerns over all kinds of things, from whether they're looking at a screen for too long, to whether they're being sedentary, to whether they live in a city and they're inhaling too many toxic fumes. So I don't think you can say definitively that there's no health effect whatsoever from the phone, because we know that there are in general. But is 5G any more dangerous than 4G? It's very unlikely.
We do hear all these scare stories every time. You mentioned microwaves earlier on, like, you weren't supposed to stand near it in case you were poisoned, and you couldn't have phones in your pocket, and the phones were going to give you cancer and everything. Like, there's always a lot of scares about any technology like that, isn't there?
And it's a very attractive message. So up until 18 months ago in Kerry, they had a rule where you couldn't put a mobile mast within a mile of a school, and it was for exactly that reason, that parents were freaked out, and there was a kind of a general feeling that a mobile mast was a dangerous thing for your health. There are county councils all over the country that are considering this. There's one in Sligo at the moment where an independent councillor has kind of led a movement there to try and stop any 5G equipment being put in the area. Of course, the irony here is that if you don't have a mobile antenna or a mast, you generally get rubbish signals and coverage. And I've actually debated against one TD, Fianna Fáil TD in Cork, who was ranting and raving about how his village had been left behind by the state in terms of mobile coverage. But then when I pointed out to him that he led a movement recently objecting to the erection of a mast that would give mobile coverage, he said that was a completely different matter. So sometimes people sort of want to have it both ways.
And have some countries halted the rollout of 5G?
There's no country that has halted the rollout of 5G. In Brussels, the local environment minister there, a woman called Clémentine Fremont, essentially has paused the rollout of 5G infrastructure in the Brussels area, because she says she wants to see more proof and analysis around what the adverse health effects might be in the long term. That's pretty much an isolated case, though. I don't think there are very many other areas that have done that. There was a letter signed by 180 scientists and doctors sent into the European Union, and those scientists were from around Europe, and they raised what they felt were concerns over the long-term adverse health issues connected to 5G. But once again, they're kind of drops in the ocean. The vast majority of the scientific community or regulators that have looked at this have concluded there isn't really any difference between 5G and 4G.
It's quite limited at the moment, certainly here in Waterford anyway. Do you think that's just a financial thing, or is it like a real testing ground, though?
There are two reasons for that. The first is that the operators don't have any obligation under Irish telecoms law to roll out 5G across the country in the same way that they did for 3G and 4G. Now, normally for those previous rollouts, the operators had a license obligation of between 70 and 90% of population. Now, not the country, but of population. So once you take the 5 cities out of the equation, including Waterford City, you're not left with very much coverage for them to meet their obligations. That's one reason why so many areas have had bad coverage over the last 5 to 10 years. In general, the operators will cover most of the area, most of most populated areas with 5G over time, because that's just the way it goes. They have to, for competitive reasons. Businesses, local businesses, small businesses, they will go to the network that does have the best coverage in the end. At the moment, that happens to be Vodafone. Air has said they're aggressively going to try and catch up with that. They're investing a few €100 million in that, and Three would lay their own claims. But most people would say that at the moment, actually most objective tests show that at the moment Vodafone has slightly better coverage around the country, and as a result they hoover up most of the business.
Because Simon Coveney, the Taoiseach, was talking about it yesterday as if it was the risen Jesus. Like, if it's, nobody would have to go to hospital even. We could all be treated remotely, which sounds great on paper, but I can't see that happening today or tomorrow. Yeah,
well, Simon Coveney was just delighted that the thing was launched in Cork. He made a big thing, because I was there. I was there at the launch in UCC, and he made a huge thing about the fact that this was new technology being launched in Cork, and he's delighted to see that Cork was the centre of things. So there was a touch of euphoria throughout his delivery there around that. There may be a sense that he feels that this is a gift from Cork to the country. I don't know, but they certainly did show off some medical technology, particularly remote prognosis of potential crash victims, getting an ultrasound done using a small machine and an iPad and connecting to the 5G network, where the doctor or the surgeon back in the hospital could immediately, with no delay at all, like not a quarter of a second delay or half a second delay that you might see on a 3G or 4G network, no delay whatsoever, could see what the problem was. And they say, those doctors say that would help enormously. So I think that's what he was talking about, Manon.
Okay, it sounds like it's going to be great fun if we all eventually get it. But thanks for talking to me, Adrian.
Thanks, Maria.
See you, bye-bye. That's Adrian Weckler there, technology editor with the Irish Independent. Well, let's have your thoughts. Are you concerned? Because every time there's talk about trees being cut down, somebody will text in this programme saying this is all to make way for 5G, that the trees are being cut down and we're ruining the planet and it's dangerous and it's this, that and the other. Do you have concerns? 083 333 975. That's how you get in touch. Or you can call 051 846 123 and have your say on that, or anything else that we're talking about this morning, or anything that we're not talking about. And how did all the Leaving Certs get on last night? Did they all get home safe and sound and have a good time and enjoy themselves and enjoy their celebrations? You can let me know what went on in your house as well. Back after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme now. Next up, hearing of any tragedy involving water is always particularly sad, I think, because in many instances people are near water to have a good time and enjoy themselves, yet it could end up tragically. But good weather, bit of sun, having a fun day out doesn't mean your job as a parent can take a break either, particularly if you're near water. Water Safety Ireland has had to issue a warning to parents telling them a lifeguard is not a babysitter. Roger Sweeney is Deputy CEO of Water Safety Ireland. Roger, good morning.
Maria, good morning.
I can understand in a way that if you're on a beach and the sun is shining and the weather's good and everybody's happy and your children are playing and there's a lifeguard on site and you're thinking, yeah, they're grand, there's somebody else minded them, that you might take your eye off the ball. But really, it's not acceptable.
No, and children are particularly at risk because at the end of the day they rely on constant supervision. And when I say constant supervision, I mean responsible, uninterrupted supervision. And that's what they need really to stay safe. And what's been an alarming trend in recent years is for parents to sometimes treat lifeguards as a babysitting service, which is incredible to hear from lifeguards. So while adults arrive to the beach with their children, they'll sometimes go off and get an ice cream, or they'll meet with other adults, or they'll even go for a drink. And the lifeguards that are trained by our volunteers around the country within Water Safety Ireland, they train the lifeguards to prevent a drowning.
Yeah.
And of course, yes, the lifeguards are trained to undertake a rescue, but primarily they spot potential dangers, and they're trained to get to a scene quickly, and that's so that they can prevent an emergency scenario before it even has a chance to unfold. So they're not babysitters. So people need to take this personal responsibility for children in their care. So and what's an alarming trend as well is we're basically seeing the use of mobile phones on beaches to such an extent now that people are constantly accessing their phones and other devices without realising that the children in their care, they can quickly wander into danger. And 30 children aged 14 and under did drown in a 10-year period. That's a classroom of kids. Now, thankfully, that didn't happen at lifeguarded waterways, but really, I think, Maria, what we're seeing is I suppose it's the modern day equivalent of when parents used to arrive to a beach, they'd send their kids off playing while the parents read a book or took a nap. But, and I've heard that from so many adults of a certain age, and indeed grown-up children will tell me that they used to have great fun wandering for hours beside the beach. But thankfully, I think most parents now realise that they must take responsibility. No, they have to keep their eyes open all the time. But the mobile phone has become addictive. So their eyes are open, but they're diverted onto the mobile phone. So we're just asking people to keep an eye on their kids and not their phone.
Do you think, Roger, in a way, there's a lack of understanding about what being a lifeguard means? I think, as I mentioned there, the weather's nice, we're all getting tans, we're all happy, we're on the beach, and we think nothing ever happens on Irish beaches much. Like, it'd be a rare thing that somebody get into trouble and the lifeguard would have to spring into action like Baywatch and just pull them out of the water and everything is fine. But I don't think they appreciate the stress that somebody on a beach whose job it is to save someone in trouble must be under, just waiting and watching to make sure that everybody's safe.
I absolutely, Maria. I couldn't agree more. And, we have some numbers behind that. And we tend to look at statistics, but we look behind the statistics. So I could talk to you a little bit about the fact that, 103 people drowned last year. It's a terribly tragic figure, but we take a 10-year analysis, to look at trends and behaviour behind those trends, So one of those is the fact that, last year the lifeguards actually reunited 300 young children that they found wandering close to water. And that's been an ongoing trend every year. But I think people don't realise, that, and again, sorry for digressing, but it's particularly since the increase in the use of mobile phones. And that,
it's so distracting.
Yes, so the responsibility on the lifeguard is tremendous then to try and get that young child back to safety while patrolling a beach and monitoring the situation, because again they're trained to prevent an emergency scenario before it has any chance to unfold, you see. So as well as that, there's a reason that we ask people to swim at lifeguarded waterways. It's a stressful job, absolutely, but the lifeguard is trained to deal with that stress. And it's reflected in some other stats in that 330 people were rescued from drowning by lifeguards last year. So there's a reason we talk to parents and speak to them about going to these lifeguarded waterways. And more often than not, people need rescuing because they've needlessly put themselves at risk. So drownings happen usually for three reasons, Maria, or a combination. One is the lack of ability or training. So we ask people, get trained for your aquatic activity, get your children trained. But then they either overestimate their ability or they underestimate the risk. It's a combination of two. And then sometimes when there's alcohol involved, they don't realise. So that's the type of pressure that lifeguards are under. That's why they rescued 330 people last summer. It's because people overestimate their ability. So we're asking people, stay within your level of ability, swim within your depth, stay within your depth. And drownings, by their nature, they're deceptively quiet occurrences, really. There isn't that splashing and shouting and waving, what you see on television. But a lot of people believe that a person in difficulty will make it very obvious that they're drowning, but that's not the case in many scenarios, and that can lull family into this false sense of security that their children are fine, they're quiet and they're getting on with it. But people have drowned beside others who are completely unaware of a scenario unfolding, so that's why mobile phones are a particularly dangerous distraction in that scenario,
Like, I don't think any parent worthy of the name would ever leave their child in the bath on their own, their small child, I mean, would ever just go down and go, there, splash around there now and you'll be grand and have fun and just go down and watch Coronation Street or something. They'd never do it at home. But they seem to think, because this lifeguard is there and everything is fine and it's, like I said, it's sunny and it's nice and pleasant and sure nothing bad will happen in such a nice situation, and they're wrong. they could be
the
wrong.
Tragedy of all that, and I've spoken to so many about this after certain particular tragedies, and they're all tragic, but when it comes to letting children play near water, the parents, and indeed the older teenagers and the older older brothers and sisters that have responsibility for these kids, they can sometimes be lulled into a false sense of security by exactly what you've just described, Maria. The warm weather, the picturesque environments, a temptation to upload the scene onto Facebook or Viber or WhatsApp or all that, So these distractions, they're innocent, really, But people need to remember, that uninterrupted supervision is the key. And really, if you don't talk about water safety, it doesn't become part of the culture, So we have 5 drownings every fortnight in this country. If we look over 10 years, so we don't typically look at 1 year. I did mention 103 people drowned last year, and it was, in terms of trying to say it was good news, okay, it was the lowest in 80 years. And it was 5 fewer than the year before, 109 drowned in 2017. So it has this downward trend. But if you look at the 10-year average, where you start to look at the weather-related behaviours and that, then you suddenly realise that, we have 124 people drowning on average in this country. That's 5 every fortnight. So it's a significant public health issue, really, and it needs to be part of a wider national conversation, and it begins at home. And that's why, actually, just before the summer holidays, before over 500,000 primary school children took to the summer holidays, we sent nearly 600,000 wristbands to primary schools across the country. Every primary school got them. Yeah. And they did one thing. They explained the lifeguard flags so that the primary school kids could start having that conversation at home. And I certainly remember the conversation around road safety and seatbelts. And children drove that conversation within their own households. And that's what we need with water safety. Because at the end of the day, we need this cultural shift. And we don't want to instill an unhealthy fear of water. So that's why we put tips up on our website like watersafety.ie. That's to instill a healthy respect for these lovely environments that we have. And you have some of the most beautiful waterways in your county. And, you look at the people enjoying the beaches, lakes and rivers every day at the moment. Yeah. But it's respecting them and knowing how you can be safe. And watersafety.ie will give you those tips.
And also, they look very pretty, like inflatable unicorns and inflatable lilos with, teddy bears on them. They look very benign and very, fun things to be around, which they undoubtedly are. But they can be very dangerous.
Well, Maria, it's interesting that you should even bring them up, because we call those inflatable toys floating killers, especially if a parent is using a mobile phone, because it only takes seconds for one of those floating toys to be swept by a breeze or taken by a current. So that's why we say that those toys should never be used by children to float in open water, because they can be swept out in seconds, by a breeze, and they can deflate as well. And you know what? Another interesting scenario with those is that adults are at risk of drowning if they swim out. They swim out attempting to retrieve the child who's floating on the inflatable toy. So they can get into difficulty because they're not comfortable swimming in their own depth. It's all about knowing your ability and staying within it. Give us
your website again. We'll get all these tips for anyone who's interested.
Watersafety.ie.
Watersafety.ie.
Give the parents exactly what they need to know, and it will give the children, and there are links there to some new resources that we have for primary schools. Primary school teachers have now started to use the free resources we have, the free certifications that we motivate the children with, and they're great fun. And the beauty of those resources that are on that site is that some children actually help design them. So we don't preach to these children. It's coming back to changing the culture and actually instilling this healthy respect for the aquatic environments. And watersafety.ie will give parents exactly what they need to know to instill that safety consciousness around water.
Roger Sweeney, Deputy CEO of Water Safety Ireland. Thanks very much for talking to me.
Pleasure, Maria. Thank you.
Join the WLR conversation on Twitter using hashtag Déise Today.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme. We were talking about 5G at the start of the programme there, and Tony in Ballymac has gotten in touch with the related subject. He says industrial wind turbines. Ongoing research concerns in scientific field, but they can be 400 metres from a residence because they would find it hard to place them. Otherwise, it would be too late if proof of health hazards is ever published. I'm always fascinated by those wind turbines because they seem to bother some people. and then they don't seem to bother other people. Like, other people are living near them, don't have any issue with them, no problem whatsoever. And then other people, the flicker of the thing going round, like, affects them in some way. They're supposed to frighten horses. They're supposed to. I find the whole thing fascinating with the wind turbines there. What else have I got? My daughter got 7 passes in her leaving, and I'm proud of her. She's been struggling with 2 years health-wise. They all went to Carlow last night celebrating, and didn't they deserve it? And so say all of us to everybody who was out celebrating last night, and hope everybody got home safe. Seamus says, what a load of waffle from your expert. He actually stated that they don't know what the long-term effects of 5G. That's not good enough. Waterford people, therefore, are being used as guinea pigs. Scary times ahead, says Seamus. Seamus, like, let's keep a cool head here now, because the World Health Organization says that no adverse health effects have been established as being caused by mobile phone use for a start. They can't rule out that they're possibly carcinogenic, but it's in the same category, if you were listening, as eating pickled vegetables, using talcum powder, and alcoholic drinks and processed meats are classed as higher risk. So if you're going to have pubs around with, going for a drink and everything, then you're also being used as a guinea pig there, or having, if you're going to have a sausage blah or something, there you are. You're at worse risk than you are with the mobile phone technology. And I think we have to keep things in perspective a little bit here. There doesn't seem to be any significant difference between what we already have access to. And remember, as Adrian said, the microwave story. Everybody was, don't stand in front of the microwave, you'll end up infertile, and don't do this and don't do that, and, don't have your phone in your pocket and all this kind of stuff. Maybe it's just a case of people's genuine concerns, but just because you're concerned, it doesn't mean that it's a concern that isn't unfounded. So maybe, and hopefully that's the case here, but it doesn't seem to be significantly different than anything else that we have access to. Now, maybe a lot of you heading off to festivals thinking you're going to have a little bit of substance abuse, shall we say, and a lot of people end up at festivals, they take things, they don't know what they are, and the consequences are tragic. And we've heard recently about the poor young man in Clonmel, Jack Downey. He took a substance at Independence Festival in Cork. You don't know what's in anything that you get. So, is it a case that it would be better and safer, and we're all living in the real world here, that you would bring in drug testing, provide drug testing at these festivals? So if you have something, you go up, it gets tested, you find out it's rat poison or it's something dangerous, and you haven't taken it, you're alive, you haven't taken it. Is that the way forward? To discuss this with me, I have 2 addiction counsellors. I have Barry Grant and Willie Collins, and you're both very welcome to the programme. Thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for you.
Barry, I'm going to start with you. What's your thoughts on this idea?
Yeah, I think there are potential upsides. There's a few downsides with it as well. But I suppose ideally, if it saved one person's life, then there's your upsides right there. If there are sufficient facilities there to test, say, an ecstasy tablet or powder or whatever it is the person has bought, before they consume it, that will tell them, look, there's some dangerous compound in here, there's something in here that you weren't expecting that could be highly toxic, more toxic than the actual drug that you were planning to take in the first place, or more dangerous than that. There's research there to show that in a lot of cases where they have drug testing on site at festivals and clubs, that people will dispose of the drugs in those situations if they're told, look, there's a dangerous compound in here that will be putting your health at risk. A lot of people in that situation will actually dispose of the drugs. So that, to my mind, in and of itself, is the major upside with it. Now, there are potential downsides in that. To get a proper reading, you need really, really expensive high-tech equipment, and ideally you'd be sending the drugs away to a proper laboratory where we could do a full range of tests on it. Most festivals wouldn't be able to do that. So you might, in some cases, not be giving people the correct information or sufficient information. You might just be able to tell them, well, look, it's mostly MDMA, and that's all we know. And that could be problematic as well. But I suppose in an ideal world, of course, nobody would be buying street drugs where they have no idea what they're putting into their bodies. But the reality is a substantial number of people are going to do that, and if we can stop one or two of those people from dying by overdose or doing their bodies some serious damage, and then that will be the benefit, I think. Willie,
what do you think?
Yeah, I suppose we had this debate, some years ago when needle exchange and all that was being introduced, and it's I suppose the HSE has and the government really have adopted a policy of harm reduction rather than absolute, focused on any services. And I think, without sort of condoning or encouraging people to use drugs, of course, anything that would prevent a catastrophic sort of a result as we had, last week, would be a good thing. But having said that, I think that there's other things that have happened as well. New legislation around drugs, but referring people to the HSE and all of that sort of thing. Like, the HSE won't be able to cope with that level of service. Or I think if you're going to provide drug testing, I think you should also have some sort of health promotion or health advisory sort of services alongside all of those, because people are probably obviously don't know what they're taking and don't know why they're taking it. And really, people take drugs to enhance their mood or enhance their life, and maybe at the age that we're talking about 17, 18, 19, 20 years, the biggest need there is to develop, sort of coping skills for life without the aid of substances. And so it should be a combination of services rather than just a drug testing and say, away you go,
But you wouldn't be, if you're at a festival, you don't want somebody telling you, here's a drug treatment place to go to and there's a counsellor to go to. You wouldn't have any interest because you're at a festival.
No, that's true. But I do think that they will provide sort of information for people as well in relation to it. And I suppose I'd encourage, any family members that have concerns around that, even to go and talk to a counsellor, that would encourage them to deal with the situation in their own home. Like, if the acceptability of drugs among young people is a grave concern, and what it is that people don't develop coping skills and living skills, but what they do is substitute it by taking substances, then to give them confidence and to give them good feelings about themselves. And that should be done really in their overall development, both at home and in school and in other social situations.
Barry, I'd say it'd be a right wake-up call if you are trotting off to some festival and you say, would you ever test that for me if this happens? And I think some people there is a crowd that do it already. I don't know if it's here in the UK, and if you're told that's rat poison and if you had taken that, you'd be dead. That must be a huge wake-up call.
Yeah, you would imagine so. Hopefully, that does kind of have the desired effect on people. I've worked with clients who've had, serious overdoses with, they might have been taking ecstasy for years, and then they take a particular tablet, assuming it's the same thing, but a totally different batch, and wind up in the hospital. And for them, that can be that wake-up call. In an ideal world, you don't want to be ending up in A&E to have your wake-up call. You want to have that moment before then. So I suppose these kind of interventions can provide people with that. I mean, they've seen, say, in other countries, Holland and Belgium, where they do this at festivals, or where individuals are allowed to send in samples of drugs to a laboratory confidentially without the risk of arrest, and then they get the results back. They've been able to prevent drug deaths where there was a case, these Superman pills a few years ago in Holland and Belgium. They identified a toxic substance in them. They put out all the information across all the different media and the clubs and festivals. They had no drug deaths, but in the UK they had 4 deaths from that particular batch of drugs. So you can see when you compare places where drug testing exists versus other countries where it doesn't, there are some benefits there. But I mean, definitely what Willie's talking about there is, the ideal situation is we learn how to have fun, enjoy ourselves, cope with stressful situations without having to resort to drugs. I mean, the country, and that would include rural areas in County Waterford, South Kilkenny and other places all around the country, is awash with cocaine at the moment. And, if you get a white powder presented to you, you have no idea what is in that. I think we have one cocaine-related death in Ireland every week. So it's not just about, people tend to think of ecstasy tablets. That's something that comes up. But cocaine will be another one where people really have no idea what they're putting into their bodies.
OK, we have to leave it there. Thanks very much for talking to me. You've been listening to Addiction Counsellors. They're both Addiction Counsellors, Barry Grant and Willie Collins. Let's have your thoughts on that. Do you think that's a good idea, that, at least if you knew that you were about to put something absolutely awful into yourself, it'd be better than taking it and going home in to your parents, not even alive? You can let me know your thoughts on that. And I'm looking for advice for you, please. Somebody's texted to say, do any of you have any advice for me? Going on holidays in 10 days, and my 10-year-old is absolutely terrified about flying. We've flown before, but she seems very anxious this time, and she's crying every night about it. And so if you have any advice on that had happened to you, what did you do to calm the child down? Let's have a thought, please, on that as well. I'd be asking the question, what happened between the last time she flew and this time? How old was she the last time she flew compared to now? And has she maybe seen that on the telly that involved turbulence? Maybe she watched that Manifest thing. Did anyone see that? Where you go on a plane and then you land 5 years later and everything has changed. But what has happened between the last time? If you could tell me that, what happened between the last time she flew and this time? And if any of you have an anxious child that you're trying to get on a plane, or you've had to bring on a plane, what did you do to help calm the child down? Let's have your advice, please, because everybody is full of wisdom, in my opinion. I think everybody is able to help other people when they just have a think about somebody else's problem. 083 3333 975. You have any advice for this parent? Or 051 846 123. Back after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
You are welcome back to the programme. This texter says, hi, I'm a mother of 4, 2 in their 20s and 2 under 10. As a mother, all I can do is my best to bring them up as best I can, but I can't be with them 24/7. I just hope that they have the ability to stay away from drugs. I think that's, you just summed up what a lot of parents feel there. Caroline, on the other hand, called to say her brother and his wife did everything right with their son, who's now in his late 20s. He came from a good, stable home. They provided for him brilliantly without spoiling him. From the time he was 19, however, he got into drugs regardless. He's become an addict and they have no contact with him anymore. He left home and they have no idea where he is. He gave them an awful time, though, before he left, stealing from them and everything. He says sometimes you can do all the right things as a parent and kids will make their own negative choices anyway. And that must be absolutely terrible, because as a parent you remember the cute little kid they were, and bringing you presents, and then they grow up into this person that, because they're in the grip of whatever addiction it is, will steal from you and lie to you and look you in the eye and say, no, I didn't do that, or no, I'll never do that again, or no, it wasn't me. And the difference between that cute little kid that you reared and this adult who's deep in the grip of whatever addiction it is, be it gambling or drugs or whatever it is, that must be pretty hard to take. And then when you don't know where he is, you don't know if he's alive or dead, like you don't know anything about it, it's very difficult. And as the first texter says, all you can do is, teach them the best way you can and hope they make the right decisions. Now, hands-free kits in cars. Some British MPs want to kind of outlaw them and mean that you can't use them in the car because they think they're dangerous, saying that it's as harmful as holding a phone. What do you think? Well, to discover what he thinks, I have Dave Humphries, road test editor at Completecar.ie on the line. You're very welcome to the programme, Dave.
Hi, Maria.
How are you doing?
Good.
Now, what's your thoughts on the whole hands-free thing? Because, I mean, in fairness, some people drive for a living. They they deliver and they're constantly on the road, and they might need to talk back to base or something. What's your thoughts on it?
You're right, absolutely. Having a phone in a car is essential for a lot of people, whether they're delivery drivers or even taxi drivers and things like that. They have to be connected. But it's what the MPs are proposing in the UK is to not even have the use of hands-free kits where effectively you can make a call without having to touch or hold a phone. I just can't see how they can really enforce this. And really, I think the biggest problem around mobile phone use in cars isn't actually around making calls. It's all the other distractions that they have. It's social media. You only have to look around at other road users today. We seem to be more distracted than ever behind the wheel. And as soon as I come up to a red light, for example, you look in the car behind, and 9 times out of 10, it seems that you see the head go down because they're looking at their phone, or, so we seem to be incredibly distracted, and it is undoubtedly the cause of numerous accidents and deaths as a result. And I think it's the attitude we actually need to change, rather than just bringing in a law that is probably going to be quite difficult to enforce anyway.
And is there something about the hands-free thing, or even talking on the phone via a hands-free thing, as opposed to talking to a passenger in the car? Does it affect your brain in a different way? How are they not equally as distracting?
Well, doing anything other than purely driving is going to take away some of your awareness, and it depends on. I guess you could be having a very stressful phone call with an employee, or with your boss, or with a family member. Really, best practice is to just drive, and if you've got to make a phone call, pull in. But that's obviously not very realistic for a lot of people, and at least having a hands-free device means that you're not, both your hands are going to be on the wheel, you're going to be in physical control of the car. And modern cars nowadays are having more and more integration, and it's easier to integrate your phone. So you have smartphone devices with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto that make it easier to connect your phone, but don't allow you to do certain features, such as send a text message. You can only do it via voice. Now, that's great if you've got a new car, but not everybody has a new car. So at least with hands-free kits, it's a Bluetooth kit is a way that they don't have to touch the phone, so to speak, if they can answer a call. But really, nowadays, we see more people are texting rather than calling, so your eyes are averted down, you're looking at a screen, and I think this is the attitude that we need to kind of try and shift. And really, the fines, if you are caught using a handheld device, probably aren't enough to deter people at the moment. In Ireland, it's 3 penalty points and a €60 fine. If you take it to court and contest it, you can end up getting up to 5 points and a €90 fine. It's still not a huge deterrent for a lot of people, and that's still on the basis of them being caught doing it in the first place.
It must be quite difficult, to catch somebody actually on the phone. Back in the day, like before we got smartphones and everything, I'm not going to lie, I used to text when I was driving, but I didn't look at the phone because I didn't have to, because it wasn't I could literally press 1, 2, 3 and I knew what I was going to get. I'm not proud of it, before you come at me, I'm not proud of it, but I could do, I didn't even have to look at what I was texting. I don't know how anyone texts while driving on a smartphone. I just don't.
And I see it every day I drive now. I see it, whether it's on the motorway, in traffic. You just see people constantly on their phones. I've seen people watching what I can only imagine is Netflix, with the phone stuck to the windscreen, and just because it's stuck to the windscreen doesn't mean it's okay. Yeah, and I think the attitude that we have towards mobile phone use in Ireland really needs to change in the way that to a significant degree we changed the social attitude towards drink driving years ago. I think this is an even bigger problem now that we have, because almost everyone has a smartphone, and we're allowing ourselves to be distracted while we're driving cars. And it is a major problem. I think we need to move away from it. And bringing in a law is great, but I think actually you need to have, if you're sitting in a car and your friend is driving and they take out their phone, you need to be saying something to them, not just letting it happen.
OK, Dave, we leave it there. Thanks for talking to me.
Cheers,
see you,
thanks.
bye-bye. Dave Humphries there, road test editor at Completecar.ie. Somebody suggesting the technology in the car should be made to kill the phone signal if the car is moving. It's funny, they give you all these things to do in the car, that you really shouldn't be doing in the car, but they're just selling points, like the speed the car will do, 0 to 60 and whatever. Who needs to go that fast from a standing start? But, you can do this, and you can connect this in the car, you can connect that in the car, you can do this, you can do that. just because you can do it doesn't necessarily mean that you should.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
We've plenty more coming up for you in the next hour of the programme. We're going to be talking about racism and is Ireland a racist country? Are we racist people? You can answer that question for me. And we've more information on the 10-year-old who's scared of flying. So plenty more to come in the next hour, and lots of your comments as well, which I'll bring after the news at 11 with Sinead.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
You are welcome into the second hour of the programme. It's Maria in for Damien here with you until midday, and some reaction coming into what we've been talking about so far. We were talking about parents literally having to get told off basically from Water Safety Ireland, going the lifeguards aren't there to babysit your kids, that's your job, so get off your phone and watch them. Not just on the beach, in pools too, says this texter. Parents in Ireland don't listen to lifeguards, they seem to know better. And somebody else says, we must never forget when it comes to people visiting beaches that even if there is a lifeguard on duty, he or she is only human and can get into difficulty trying to save someone who might go too far out into the water or who go into it after drinking. It's true what that man says. We should all be careful around water. And it's, I think he made a very good point that, and I think this particularly applies to lifeguards at pools. Not everybody who's drowning is going to go, help me, I'm drowning. Some people just sink to the bottom of the pool. They're just gone. And the lifeguard is there watching all those kids and all the splashing. Does that splash mean that there's a kid in trouble? Does that splash mean that there's a kid in trouble? Am I missing something that, has somebody just gone to the bottom of the pool and I can't see them? It must be such a stressful job. I think we think, because a lot of them maybe might be students and it's a summer job or something, that it's not a stressful job. It must be hugely stressful to make sure that everybody that goes into the water comes out of it safe on your watch. Absolutely hugely stressful in my opinion. Anyway, and also back to I was asking for more information about the 10-year-old who's scared to fly, and the parent got back to say, we've been on 2 family holidays. She's been very nervous both times, but worse now. All flights were smooth, no incidents of turbulence. She thinks the plane is going to fall from the sky, even though I've reassured her that it's the safest form of transport. She has worry stones and fairy worry things, and none of them work for her. I don't know. Have any of you any advice for this parent? You could give her the option. I know this sounds mean, but you could. Do you really not want to fly? Do you want to stay at home? I don't know where you're going on your holidays. If it's a nice, maybe going to a sunny place where there's going to be loads of exciting things to do, and test how bad she really is and go, do you not want to come with us? Because you can stay at home if you feel that badly about it. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Or maybe it's a case of, is she anxious about everything, or is it just anxious about flying? Is she just an anxious child? At 10, I think that it happens a lot with kids. But if any of you have had that issue with your child, please get in touch and let us know, and we can pass on your advice. But maybe just, I don't know, maybe she's kind of overthinking the thing with, the worry stones and the fairy worry things and everything. Maybe just go, it's not going to, you're going to be afraid to get into the car because, the car doesn't crash. There are car crashes, but you get into a car all the time, and try and rationalise it for her that way. I don't know. Any of you parents have any more advice? Please get in touch on 083 3333 975 and see if we can help this parent out and the 10-year-old, because there's nothing worse than being nervous about something and, trying to work your way up to doing it and being really scared. And even if you've done something safely, it's quite curious that she's had safe flights and that hasn't reassured her, and she's getting more anxious about this one, even though the ones that she's been on before have all been uneventful and no turbulence or anything. Interesting. But if any of you guys can help, 051 87 846 123 is how you get in touch, or you can WhatsApp or text 083 3333 975. Now, this idea that I was talking about at the top of the programme, where you get this letter going, hi, your late Auntie Mary has passed away and you're her only surviving relative, and we've tracked you down and she's left you 10 million. It's everybody's dream, I think. But as I said at the start, it's somebody's job to try to track us down. Maeve Mullin is Senior Researcher and Office Manager of Finders International's Dublin office, and she's on the line now. You're very welcome to the programme, Maeve.
Good morning, Maria.
How are you?
Delighted. Great.
That must be quite an interesting job you have.
It's a fascinating job, and I absolutely love it. It's a real Miss Marple type job, tracking down people and doing the family history research in order to make sure that we're tracking down the correct people. Yeah.
So what's entailed? How do you get involved in it? Say if I'm living in the UK and I die and nobody comes. Is it that nobody comes to claim you, or what happens?
Exactly. I suppose a typical scenario, Maria, is where a person is living in a nursing home in the UK. They don't have any next of kin in that they weren't married, perhaps didn't have any children, and their medical file says that there is no next of kin, and perhaps they haven't had any visitors either. And in that instance, we are sometimes contacted by nursing homes or councils in the UK to locate their extended Irish family if it's known that they were born in Ireland, or perhaps they were born in the UK but didn't have any brothers and sisters, but their parents are from Ireland. So that's the I suppose it happens more often than you would think. Yeah.
And what sort of a time limit is there on these?
Well, in terms of how quickly do we need to locate family? Yeah. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we are referred cases and the person has passed away several months ago, and it's just their estate that needs to be sorted out. But in other instances, we actually get urgent cases where in Ireland, when somebody passes away, their funeral happens usually within 2 or 3 days. But in the UK, that can be 2 or 3 weeks. And in some instances, we do get urgent cases where the deceased person their funeral hasn't taken place yet, and we are asked to search for extended family so that they can instruct undertakers.
Okay, and I presume there's two different strands here that we're talking about. I leave a will saying I leave my niece Maria in. I haven't seen her for 40 years. She probably even forgot I exist, but I leave her everything I have. She's my only relative and I want her to have everything. And then the people who die intestate. Exactly.
And so if a deceased person has made a will, then they are deemed to have died testate, and their estate is distributed according to the wishes that they write down in their will. And if they don't make a will at all, then it's the intestacy rules that apply. So that's where a full family tree is required in order to determine who is entitled.
And if I was in, this is fanciful talk now, Maeve, but if I was in this nursing home and I say to all the staff in the nursing home, I want to leave the cats and dogs home.
Yes.
But I don't officialise it in any way.
Yes.
Would you still be involved then?
It has to be official. So I suppose legally the person has to have expressed that wish for their estate to go to the cats and dogs home in a will, and the will has to be witnessed. And so,
but if that's the case, you're not involved. Then you don't have to track down any relatives to say your Auntie Mary died and she left everything to the cats and dogs home, which I think would be a heartbreaking letter to get if she was rich.
Exactly. Well, I suppose we do say to potential beneficiaries that we have tracked down that we believe that they are entitled according to our research, but things can happen that mean that the person does not inherit. So if it's thought that a deceased person dies and that they haven't made a will and the intestacy laws apply, then we may track down potential beneficiaries, but then if a will is subsequently found, then the people that we have located may not inherit.
Okay.
Other instances can happen where it's thought that somebody has that they owned their own house or that they had bank accounts and therefore there is an estate to be distributed. But there are times when it's discovered that there are, say, nursing home bills or tax bills or other outstanding expenses that mean that the estate is extremely small or is actually wiped out altogether. So I suppose when we locate people, we're at pains to point out that at this point in our research, we believe that they are going to be potential beneficiaries, but nothing
whatever's
is
left
100% sure until the solicitor has done their work in terms of sorting out the entire probate and figuring out what the distribution should be.
And could potentially, having been found as, the last surviving person who should technically get everything, could you then be found to be liable for bills of this person that that doesn't come into it at all?
Absolutely not. So when we locate potential beneficiaries, we ask them to sign our agreement, which gives us permission to continue on with I suppose, to apply for this person's share on their behalf, but it also protects the potential beneficiary that they will never be liable for any fees.
And go ahead, sorry.
And our fee comes out of their inheritance.
Okay.
Like we will never go back to them looking for fees if they haven't actually inherited money.
And it would be quite easy to assume that the kind of people that you're dealing with, the kind of people who are dead that you're dealing with, maybe went to America years ago when it wasn't possible to come back and it wasn't possible to stay in contact. But that's not necessarily the case, is my understanding.
We actually work on cases from all over the world. Yeah, we do a lot of US cases and lots of Irish cases as well. And when Irish people emigrated years ago, it's amazing. Some kept in touch an awful lot, but it doesn't seem to be that there was necessarily any kind of a falling out in families. It's just that for some reason people drifted away, and in some instances people will stay in touch while their parents are alive, and once that generation is gone, they sometimes lose touch with their siblings, with their brothers and sisters.
So if people see an ad, do you know Maria McCann from such and such a place? That's the kind of work that you do. They're trying to trace the relatives of so and so.
Yes. We work on ads that are placed in the newspaper in the UK. We also work on ads that are placed in the Irish newspapers by, for example, the Chief State Solicitor, and we are referred cases by solicitors in the UK, solicitors in Ireland, and then by councils and nursing homes and hospitals in the UK also. Yeah.
Okay. Maeve, thanks very much for talking to me this morning. It's interesting work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thanks for the opportunity to chat.
No bother. Bye-bye. That's
Maeve
Mullin there, Senior Researcher and Office Manager of Finders International's Dublin office. Interesting. It's funny how the way some people make a living. But, we do have that dream of, you've inherited millions from this relative that you didn't even know you had. Probably particularly, I'd say it's fairly rare, but be nice if you got it anyway. 083 333 975 for your texts. Maria, I've flown around the world from China to San Francisco, all over Europe, the Far East, but I'm terrified of flying. It's waiting to take off. That's the worst part, says a texter to 083 333 975 or call 051 846 123. Back after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme. Somebody else has a problem with a swarm of wasps. Any idea how to get rid of them? Please and thanks. That is from Phil. Where are they? Are they in your house or are they just in your garden? Or because my understanding is that if you leave wasps alone, they leave you alone. But if they're near the house and they're flying into the house, that's not so easy to do, I'd say. Native-born Irishmen are the most discriminated group in Ireland, says this texter, specifically fishermen and travellers. Foreigners have more rights to our fish than we do. They are not allowed to fish eels and Irish fishermen are not allowed to fish eels and other fish, while foreigners are. Often the Commission will inspect Irish boats and let slide foreign boats. It's not just black and white and right or wrong. It's not just them and us. That is from John, who is, as you might gather from that text, a fisherman. And you can keep your calls and texts coming in on 083 333 975. That is how you get in touch. And we're going to talk about living alone now. That's what we're going to talk about next, because it has its downsides and it has its upsides. Some people absolutely love it and some people absolutely hate it. Philip Nolan, what category do you fall into?
I love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, I do. It wasn't exactly a choice, insofar as I was married for a long time and then got divorced. But since I've been divorced, I do. I love it, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a difference here. There's people who end up living alone, maybe because their kids have left and they're separated or something, and they end up living alone, and people who are living alone for the first time and they never have before and finding out, God, this is really cool. I can do what I like.
Yeah, and there is a period of adjustment, you know. I mean, the one thing I always remember was, I think 2009, my sister in the UK rang me and said she and her kids were going down to Spain and invited me to go along. And half an hour later, I went back and said, right, I'm all booked. And she came back to me and said, God, I love a man who can make up his own mind. and in fairness, that is the freedom it gives you. You know, a friend of mine rang me 2 weeks ago and said she's getting married in India in December. And did I want to go? And I just went on and said, yeah, of course. You know, you can do anything you want when you're alone. It's great.
Yeah, I like the idea of it, I must say, because sometimes the idea of having to share things is annoying when you want to do exactly what you want to do and you end up having to go home and, you know, you have to do what somebody else wants you to do. Exactly. Or compromise in some way.
The most brilliant thing about it all is that when you get home, you don't have to listen to somebody else's day at work. You've had your own. I don't need to know somebody else's day, thanks very much.
And you come home and you open the fridge and whatever you left in it is still there.
Yeah, no, that is a downside, and that is one of the downsides, in fairness, insofar as it is virtually impossible to actually cook a portion for one. And so what you do find is that when you make a dinner, there's always enough left over for a second one, and you put it in a foil tray and you stick it in the freezer, and then 6 months later you go, oh God, never ate that, throw it out. And sometimes, you know, what I often do is on a Saturday I might cook the meals for a week. But again, you end up with meals for like 3 weeks because, you know, once you chop, you know, a single pepper and an onion and some chicken or whatever, there is plenty for lots of meals. But, you know, the compensations are fantastic insofar as I work from home as well, so I am alone all day. But equally, you know, there is a lot of nonsense about social media and how it's destructive, and I agree with some of it. But certainly for me, it's like, you know, the office water cooler. It is where I actually get to talk to people. And without that, I think I might be lonely. But in actual fact, you're talking to, you know, hundreds of people every day, and that does make a difference.
Yeah, do you think loneliness is a big part of it for some people?
I think it is, and you know, I think it mostly is probably for people who've been bereaved. I know after my dad died, my mum was very lonely, and we all made a big effort to make sure that she wasn't. But for me, it's not that. It's more a positive thing for me, insofar as when I want to meet people, I can meet them. But I'm very, very happy to close my front door and just curl up on the couch and watch telly by myself. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, I think it might come down to introverts and extroverts, because I'm an introvert now, and I'm like, when I'm out socialising, which I rarely do, it's a bit of a performance for me. So I need to go home and shut the door and not speak to anyone and not communicate with anyone, and I need that alone time.
I am your typical Cancerian. I'm a total crab. When I get home, I just curl up, and if anybody prods me, I'll use the pincers. It's very simple for me.
But I think if you're a sociable person and you live alone, that must be more difficult.
Well, but the funny thing is, I am very sociable, but I have lots of outlets for that when I want to. But equally, when I don't want to, I'm very happy to just, like I say, come home and curl up on the couch. In my job especially, I get invited to lots of stuff, and I really do pick and choose, because I live in Wexford and most of the stuff is in Dublin, so it's an easy choice for me to decide when to go up and when not to go up. And if I actually need a social outlet, I'm very happy to do that. But I don't often, to be honest. I really am very comfortable in my own skin.
I think one of the main benefits of it has to be, and I don't live alone, I live with my poor beleaguered husband, but when he's not there, is that you're not disturbing anybody else with your choices. So if I feel like hoovering at 11 o'clock at night, it doesn't matter. If I feel like turning the TV volume up really loud, it doesn't matter. If I feel like using up all the hot water, it doesn't matter. You're not affecting anybody else, only yourself, and there's a certain freedom to that.
There is, and for me, it's like, I'm very much a night owl as well as a crab. for me, it's like, playing very loud music at 1 o'clock in the morning, because most of my neighbours basically have holiday homes. So for half the year, they're not actually here. So I can listen to music as loud as I like and disturb nobody else. It's fantastic.
I just think it's a really interesting concept of, some people are terrified of it until they try it, and then they go, hold on, this is actually great. And I love it,
to be honest with you, I think sometimes you might have had to have a taste of the opposite to realise how good it is. Insofar as I have friends who've never been, in relationships or married or whatever, and they definitely feel lonely because they never experienced that. Whereas if you have been like me and divorced, and God, I'm very fond of my ex-wife, so don't take this the wrong way. But when you've had it, there is a kind of a deep peace about loneliness, about being alone.
Solitude, yeah.
Afterwards, because you don't have to consult anybody about anything, and it's certainly an awful lot easier to control your finances, because nobody ever comes home to you and says, "Oh, by the way, I've got a handbag in Brown Thomas for 600 quid or whatever." So you do know exactly what you're dealing with.
I think it's something that everyone should experience, because I think it teaches you quite a lot about yourself.
It does, and the important thing is that I think probably the difference is that you kind of have to like yourself. You have to enjoy your own company, and I sometimes make myself laugh out loud.
But you can learn that, I think.
You can, but sometimes it might be an imposition. People maybe don't necessarily want to learn it, but once you actually go through the process, you actually do find that there's nothing terrifying about being alone. There really isn't. There is something terrifying about loneliness, and I get that entirely for people who are.
Yeah.
But for me, I can actually, like I say, I can pick and choose, and I often go up to Dublin and stay with my other sister, and we, go out, or I go with my mates or whatever. But it's enough for me, and I love the next morning when I just get in the car and come home to my own, little peaceful haven. Yeah,
just closing that door and going, I'm home.
No, it is important, and I think everybody benefits by aloneness sometimes. If your spouse says to you, "I want to go away with the lads," or "I want to go away with the girls for a weekend," hoosh them out the door.
Pack for them. Bye.
Take your time, enjoy it.
Philip, thanks very much for talking to me.
No worries. Cheers, Maria. Bye.
That's Philip Nolan, their columnist with the Irish Daily Mail. Of course, I should have said that at the outset. But let's have your thoughts on, do you live alone? Are you surprised that you have discovered that you are happy to live alone, and maybe you thought that you wouldn't, you were scared of it, and you've been forced to live alone, maybe your relationship is broken up or some reason? You can let me know on 083 3333 975. That's how you get in touch with the programme. Or have you found that you were terrified of it, and now you've been on your own, and now you absolutely love it, and the thoughts of sharing your house with somebody is really annoying? Or are you somebody who used to have have a house full of people and now they're all gone, they've all moved out, they're all getting on with their lives and now it's just you and you absolutely hate every minute of it. Let's have your thoughts on it on 083 3333 975. That's how you get in touch. And also if you have any advice on wasps, and if you have any advice for nervous 10-year-olds who are too scared to fly. I did suggest maybe, giving her the option not to go on the holiday, which probably isn't very good if the holiday isn't paid for. And I suspect that if you did that, she might say, no, it's okay, I'll go. But you can't, she's going to be crying every night and worrying about it, and safe flights haven't helped her. I'm at a bit of a loss, but if you guys have any suggestions, then 083 3333 975. That's how you get in touch. Back after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
Back to your comments and advice. First of all, the wasps are outside at the bins and they're coming into the house as well. This is where the person who has the swarm of wasps, are they, can you actually see them going in and out to a nest? I'm full of questions. Do you think I knew what I was talking about? I don't. But I'm just, can you actually see them going in and out to a particular nest? I'm not sure if you're allowed to touch wasps' nests or whether you have to get some professional in to help you. But maybe if you moved the bins a little bit away from the house, I don't know what your situation is, whether you have the room to do that, or do wasps die off soon enough? I'm not a wasp expert. If any of you guys are, please see if you can help this person who's texting in with the wasp problem. And on the little girl problem who's afraid to fly, hi Marie, the little girl that's afraid to fly, why don't her parents take her to the rescue helicopter and get a tour of how everything works? It might make her feel safer. Hope it helps. It might help. I don't know. It's hard to know how to, because anxiety and things like that, by definition, they're kind of irrational. So you can tell her as much as you like that it's safer than driving a car. You can tell her as much as you like, look, you've been on X amount of flights, nothing happened, there wasn't anything bad happened. But you're just not going to be able to get through to her. Somebody else says, I think it would be cruel to tell her she didn't have to go on the holiday. I think the parents should reassure her. Well, I think to be fair, the parent is doing their best to reassure her. But maybe just ignore it a little bit and just go, you know what? You've been on a plane before, you know nothing bad is going to happen, you're going to go on a lovely holiday and you can work yourself up and get worried and anxious about it, but you're just going to spoil the holiday for yourself. So I'm not worried, your daddy's not worried, we're all happy to fly, so maybe just calm down about it a bit. But I don't know if that would work either. Maybe there's an over-focus on the anxiety, but let's have your thoughts. 083 3333 975. Now, Irish missionaries, Father Déise Hartford and Father Rufus Halley, travelled to the Philippines, a country divided by violence and sectarianism in the late 1960s. For many years, they lived peacefully in the Muslim-dominated areas of the island of Mindanao, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, working to bring about a positive dialogue between the Christian and Muslim communities there. But in a volatile environment where kidnappings and attacks were everyday fears, both priests ultimately found themselves caught up in the conflict to terrifying effect. That's the blurb about a book called Murder in the Missions. It's a true story and it's written by my next guest, Jean Harrington. Jean, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks, Maria.
Father Halley, of course, was a Waterford man. What made you get involved in this story? What piqued your interest about it?
It's something everyone asks me because I really have no connection to the Catholic Church or the families. But I was working in publishing at the time, and I was working as a ghostwriter. And I remember picking up the Irish Times, and I saw an article about Rufus Halley being murdered, and a lot of people spoke about him very warmly. And the same article also referenced how Father Déise Hartford had been kidnapped in 1997, and it was just really interesting because it was very, very different from the religion that I had learnt in school. Like I didn't know what these Irish missionaries were doing in the Philippines, and they were working in Muslim-Christian dialogue and resolving conflicts and all this. So I kind of went, oh gosh, I'd love to find out more about that. Because I was working in publishing and working in books, everything that you read is kind of a potential story, that way. So I kind of cut out the article, put it aside because I was already in the middle of a project, and I said I'd come back to it. So then, kind of towards very late 2003, I rang the Columbans and I got in touch with Des Hartford. Now, he was living in Navan at the time, but I didn't realise he had advanced cancer. So he agreed to let me, do the book and facilitate it. And I interviewed him several times, but unfortunately he then passed away in March 2004. But he had put me in touch with other people who would facilitate my research and let me continue with the book, that way.
And I'd say the more you delved into it, the more fascinating it got. Just give an overview of what happened to Father Halley.
Well, Father Halley was always interested in the underdog and, the minority. So he went over to the Philippines with the other Columbans, and he started off working in a parish in Hala Hala. But there was, on the island of Mindanao, there was, a lot of conflict and a lot of, I suppose, going back historically because of the invasion of the Spanish, and basically the Muslim population were now a minority in their own country, if you know what I mean. So he really felt drawn to that. He was a fan of Charles de Foucault, who was a missionary who went to live with kind of poor and disenfranchised people in Algeria. But so Rufus was always drawn to work with the people who were in their own country, but yet they didn't get the same opportunities. Their land had been taken. They were, as I said, a minority in their own country. The army was seen as Christian, so you know what I mean. So they were quite disenfranchised, and he just was drawn to that. So there were different pockets in Mindanao where the Muslim population is higher than the Christian population, and in Marawi, for example, is one of those, and Malabang, where he ends up living. So he worked. His mission, I suppose, and Déise, but Rufus in particular, was drawn to, I suppose, just live as a Christian beside them, and show that it doesn't really matter what faith you are. If you conduct yourself with compassion and honour, people can live together.
Yeah, and he seems to have been the epitome of a Christian, and that what he was trying to do in life, he sort of achieved in death, and that the Christians and the Muslims came together to mourn him.
Absolutely, but he did it in his life as well. Actually, one of the things that he was most proud of was he negotiated. I suppose that they call it a redo. So in the Muslim communities there, if there's a lot of violence between different families and clans and stuff like that, and they can go on for generations. And there's they would say it's like an eye for an eye. So if somebody kills one person of a family, the next family can take retribution by murdering somebody else, and it can go on for generations. So this was happening between these two families in the 80s, I think, and Rufus kind of saw this happening. He ended up being a director of the secondary school in Malabang, and so he used his role to go out and visit the families. So the school had like 50% Muslim students and 50% Christian students. So he used his role to go out and visit the families and really become a part of the community. And on one particular day, there was a 17-year-old boy had been murdered, and he was just so heartbroken by this, and he could see that it was ongoing, it wasn't stopping. So when he went to the family to express his condolences, he said, can we do nothing about this? Is there no way that you can have peace? And the head of the family said, well, Father, all we want is the death that's owed to us. So he actually brokered kind of a peace deal between these two families, and which was amazing, you know what I mean? So that was kind of on his record when he was alive, and I think it was one of the happiest moments of his life. He referred to it in letters to his friends, and obviously he spoke to his friends at the time. But I was very lucky because I got access to an awful lot of his correspondence to his friends, and I was able to kind of see Rufus's, I suppose, thought process in a lot of things, and then bring that into the book.
And the book is being launched in Butlerstown, where Father Halley was from, this weekend, is it?
That's right, yeah. So there's there'll be mass at 10 o'clock in the church in Butlerstown, and then directly after mass in the Rufus Halley Centre at 11 o'clock. It's going to be launched, so I'll be there with whoever wants to come along, people of the community, the Halley family, and different people who kind of would have known Rufus. He was very, very connected to Waterford and to his parish. Every time he came home, he said mass, and everyone was delighted to have him. He was a real character, very funny, had great stories, and just seemed to be a very, very warm person. It's taken you on quite a journey, hasn't it? This finding that article in the Irish Times all that time ago to this book. I know. I mean, little did I think that I'd end up being smuggled into Marawi at the back of the Bishop's car. I went I went over to the Philippines to research the book, and it's still quite dangerous. Parts of it are quite dangerous, and Marawi in particular. At the time of Rufus's murder, the Abu Saif were targeting foreigners for kidnapping. That was a way of, I suppose, getting ingratiated into that criminal gang. So that's why Rufus was murdered in the end, because they were trying to kidnap him. But it was still a similar kind of thing when I was there. So I had to kind of be smuggled in the back of the van to go up into Marawi, because carjackings are quite common. God. And so I went into Marawi University, and I met a lot of Muslim friends of Rufus and of Déise. They were involved in negotiating Déise's release when he was kidnapped. So it's quite a journey, and I feel like I've spent quite a lot of time with Déise and Rufus' stories, and learning a lot about the Philippines and the work that they were doing, resolving, I suppose, just trying to show that Muslims and Christians can live very, very well together. It doesn't really matter what your faith is. And it also highlights as well the danger of being a missionary. Like, you're going into a country and you're trying to show people a different way, and you're coming up with local issues that are going on, and you're maybe seen as an outsider and a danger and a threat to their way of life, and if you could be kidnapped and held to ransom. It's a big deal, I think, to go to be a missionary. Oh, absolutely. When Déise's house was bombed before he was kidnapped, somebody bombed the house that he was in, and of the 7 houses that were in his parish, 6 had been bombed at different times. That way he was kidnapped. Rufus, as you know, was murdered, but the threat of kidnapping, and there were many, many other missionaries who'd been kidnapped and targeted. But I suppose that's the area that they were in, and what they were trying to do is live like the local people, that they were no different. Like, there were many, many Filipinos being murdered and targeted as well, and they really wanted just to live like them and experience and be vulnerable like them. Like, they didn't set themselves apart, and they lived within the community, they worked with the community. And Déise reflected, you can't preach from a position of power. You have to be vulnerable. Yeah. You have to be able to connect with the people that you're talking to. OK, Jean, we'll leave it there. Best of luck with the book, and thanks very much for joining me on the programme this morning. Thank you very much. Thanks. See you. Bye-bye. The book is called Murder in the Missions, and it's by my guest there, Jean Harrington. I have a copy of it to give away. If you want it, just text Rufus to 083 3333 975, or give reception a ring, and 051 872248, and tell them you'd like to be in with a chance to win this book. So text Rufus 083 3333 975 if you fancy reading that fascinating story. Back after these.
These are the days of our lives. The days of our lives on WLR.
Brought to you by Home Instead Senior Care Waterford, helping seniors stay at home and maintain their independence. Homeinstead.ie.
Many people are asking me to tell some more stories about oak cures, so here are some crackers. This cure is for warts. Fill a bag of stones, the same number of the warts you have, go to a crossroads, swing the bag 3 times over your head and let go, and the warts will vanish. But whoever finds the bag will get the warts instead. Another cure for warts was to get a black snail and rub it on the wart and then pin the snail to the wall. When the snail is withering, the wart is gone. A person who has licked a creeper frog, whatever that is, I don't know, has a cure for burdens by blowing on the burden of someone who has been burdened. Anyone for the last creeper frog? No need to get a vet if your sheep is a blind eye. Just get an ivy leaf and chew it, then spit in the sheep's eye. He may not be a friend any longer, but he'll be cured. A cure for ringworm was to put 3 fir sticks in the fire to redden them. Take them out one by one and make the sign of the cross over the ringworm, reciting a prayer at the same time. This should get rid of the ringworm. And finally, one I remember my grandmother using. That was getting fresh nettles in May and boiling them. She would use the boiled nettles as a vegetable and use the water from the drink for rheumatism and for washing her hair. And by the way, she had beautiful hair. Talk to you soon.
The Days of Our Lives on WLR.
Brought to you by Home Instead Senior Care Waterford. Celebrating 10 years of providing leading home care for Waterford seniors. Homeinstead.ie.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
Interestingly, there's loads of advice for the person with the wasps and the person with the 10-year-old, the parent with the 10-year-old. I think you seem to be doing everything that's humanly possible because nobody has an alternative to anything that you could do apart from the person who suggested taking her out to the helicopter and just proving to her that, you know, this is how things work. I'd be more terrified of a helicopter now, I have to say, than a plane. But so you seem to be doing everything you could humanly do, but lots of people coming up with suggestions about the wasps. And one of the most popular ones that are coming in says put water and a teaspoon of jam in a jar and then put 2 holes in the lid and in they go, the wasps, and then they can't get out again. This person says, my jar is nearly full, leave it on top of your wheelie bin. It's the only way that works for me. So that's a suggestion from more than one person. Tracy in Portlaw says the same thing. I have young kids. I play out in the garden, so I get a clean, empty jam jar. I put a spoon of jam in it. You know what I'm laughing at, Tracy, the way it came in. And fill a third of it with water. Leave them around the bins. They will fall inside and leave the kids alone. And they've no interest in coming into the house. And this person, Tracy, empties it every few days and refills it. So that seems to work for people. But you could try that to the person that texted in about that. And on living alone, hi Maria, says this texter, growing up our house was always full of people. Mum's family was big and we ran a B&B and self-catering business. Later I married and lived in a country area. My home was the same, always people around. After separation and when my youngest son left, I didn't know how to cope alone. The loneliness and quietness was so difficult. The younger generation are different, so you don't know your neighbours. Now I have activities and employment and lots of leisure time. So like Philip, even if I have friends or a boyfriend around for a few days, I can't wait to see the back of them. So it's a learning process. Yeah, I think it's especially good for people who are afraid to live alone, that you at some stage in your life become used to that. You know, and you realise that it's actually quite nice, like to have, not to have to answer to anyone. I don't know if, you know, your other half maybe being away for a few days is enough of a length of time to give you that feeling of, hang on, this is actually quite good. Look, that bar of chocolate I left in the fridge is still there and I can eat it and nobody's going to eat it on me. So, you know, everyone I think should give it a try, but it is different. And I think both myself and Philip were at pains to point out being alone and living alone is completely different than being lonely. And people can be lonely surrounded by people, you know, but it's different to a kettle of fish altogether. The book that we were talking about is, where am I now? It's called Murder in the Missions, a true story. It's by Jean Harrington. It's being launched this weekend in Butlerstown, where Father Rufus Halley was from. I'm sure it'll be available in all good bookshops. And I did have a copy to give away. And if I can see the name of the winner here, which I can't, but we'll give you a call after the show and tell you that you're after winning. And thanks to everybody who got in touch. And that is bringing the show to a close. This texter said, "For the love of God, by Maria, quieter keyboard." Sometimes it just happens. I can't help it, and whoever's sitting in the seat can't help it. Just be glad that Jennifer Long isn't sitting in this seat, because her typing sounds like soldiers on the march, let me tell you. But we do our best to be quiet about it. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Thanks for your company on the programme this morning. Déise Today is brought to you by Mulligan's Pharmacy and produced by Jennifer Long with the assistance of Aisling Boland. Andy Mack is up next with loads of great music for you, so keep it right here on WLR, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.